All right. So today, Brian and I are talking with Katy Goshtasbi. She is a branding expert who also focuses a lot on, self-confidence and stress. So thank you for joining us, Katy.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself? And for those who don't know, how your journey led you to law and now branding.
Yeah, it's a very diverse journey and it's all about change, which is part of what we teach people. So I teach everything I learn. I'm an immigrant. We immigrated in 79 to the US during the Iranian Revolution because we didn't know what was going on and we weren't of the religion. So my dad said, why don't you guys leave and go to Indiana for 2 weeks? And so we packed two suitcases and we left. And we never went back. So I got to grow up in the Midwest and I had a fantastic upbringing. And I always wanted to save the world by being a lawyer. That's what I wanted to do, which is kind of funny when I'm a professional public speaker. When I say that to my audiences, most people want to laugh and I allow them to laugh because no one saves the world by being a lawyer, or maybe they do. It wasn't me. So I had a fantastic career as a securities lawyer, mostly in Washington, D.C. I was a federal lobbyist, so I got to see how that ugly sausage called politics is made. And then I was at a major law firm. Before that, I was at the Securities and Exchange Commission when Enron blew up. Some people don't even know what Enron is anymore. I guess I'm dating myself at 47 years old. And then I went to go in-house to California. And that was my last legal job, you guys. It was the day I had spent 15 hours drafting an itty bitty part of the mutual fund prospectus. And that's all you need to know about that. And I went home that night and I opened my own mailbox in the dark and there was my own prospectus, and reflexively, what did I do? I threw it away because no one reads that stuff. And that was my aha moment that, oh my gosh, what if what I was doing for a living just had no meaning and merit anymore? So I quit my job cold turkey. I said, I can't do this anymore. It's going to kill me. But everyone thought I was crazy. I thought I was crazy too, because all of my colleagues in the securities legal field were like, wow, you just have so much experience and it's such a high powered job and you've been all around the block. And I said, I get it, but I just can't do this anymore. And 2 years before the recession, no one was recreating themselves. So people were like, what are you doing? Because everyone had a job. And everyone had a firm they worked for or a company they worked for. And no one relied on their own assets, on who they were to get to where they were or to figure out what they wanted to do with their life. And so that's what I saw. And so long story short, I took a random community college course taught by an ex-Harvard litigator, and it was on natural talent. And so now that's part of the process we teach people, but that's what I do every day. It's what I'm naturally good at. And he said to me in that course, he said, if you do what's natural for you, people will gravitate towards it because they can tell you're naturally good at it and it resonates with them. And they want that from you, for you, with you. So that's my long story of how I got here. And a lot of people want to put me on stage just to hear my long story because I never thought it was special because I thought, well, everyone's an immigrant and everyone's got a story, but who knew? That's now what I really love about my story and what I teach other people, that they have a story that's just as special. So there you go.
So I was going to save this for the end, but since we're using the word story so much, we are really, we're really big on origin stories, right? And we were thinking, how does your origin story, I mean, going back from coming here, how does that, kind of play a role in that journey for you and how you have transformed what you do and what you are?
Well, it's everything. The role it plays is it's who I am. Fundamentally, I am not a lawyer. I went through a big reckoning to really understand that who I am is who I am as a human being and not what I do for a living. And it was very hard to get that for myself because, as an immigrant, I was always working on doing my best so I can prove myself worthy, right? And I think people do that in general, whether they're an immigrant or not. But I think for the immigrant in us, it comes up extra loud and proud. But it's not about that. So when I quit, I remember my sister said to me one day, she said, oh my God, you're not a lawyer, you're a human. What is wrong with you? And now, of course, she's an engineer, but that was her job to knock some sanity into me. And so our origin story is so powerful. It's everything. It's what people gravitate to. It's what they resonate with. And most importantly, from my perspective of what I teach, you have to own, in air quotes, your story. You can't run away from your story. every day I'm working on clearing out the junk around my story. I kid you not, every day, even today and yesterday, because there is the past that cripples us, and we can always bring the good stuff with us, but we got to clean out, the junk from our origin story that doesn't serve us well, because it's a small child's memory. And as Dr. Joe Dispenza says, 99%, 79%, something like that, of those memories aren't even real. We've like created stuff around it and added it to our origin story, where if we strip all that junk that we've added to it, it's not even real. So we're reliving a past that's not even us. And then that doesn't help us grow or be phenomenal or serve our purpose. So that's what I say.
You mentioned like people being interested in, pieces of your story, right? One of the things that always has amazed me is how interested people are in little tiny slices of other people's lives sometimes. It's just one part that they're very interested in, like that moment in time. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So there's lots of moments in time. And if we're not interested in our own little bits of slivers of who we are, then no one else is ever going to be interested. Why? Fundamentally, the easiest answer is because we won't ever share. Right. So with professionals, I tell them this all the time. I mean, here we are 12 years into this business, and professionals still say to me, I don't want to talk about myself. I'm like, what are you going to talk about? Well, what I do for a living and how. I'm like, that is so boring. I mean, on its face, it's boring. And who's gonna be attracted to that or resonate emotionally with that? Then I have to explain the whole factor of emotional resonance and why happiness sells. And 78% of everything you and I buy is not based on content. It's how we emotionally resonate. So those slivers of your story are about connecting with people. Why do you think Brene Brown is so popular? It's thanks to Oprah, but in greater part, it's because she brought the concept of vulnerability and shame and blame to light. Why am I not sharing my story? When I stand up in my audiences, I say, there's a subconscious block we all have. And I use my own story sliver. I say, my subconscious block is that I'm an immigrant and I must not be good enough. Now, when I didn't share that, there was no real attachment to that concept. Every time I share that in my audience, I get at least one, if not many, people who email me afterwards and go, oh, don't feel that way. You're great. You know why they're saying that? Because they connected with that part of themselves and they saw me be vulnerable on stage in front of thousands of people. And it's a good thing, right? Because we've made a difference then. I've owned my doo-doo and they've owned theirs. And it's part of the process.
Well, and it's interesting too that you talked about like some people not wanting to put it out there because, that's what makes you connect. I mean, Nicolette and I were talking about, someone came up to me this morning, was like, hey, I saw your video on this. It was actually really cool. It made me think about X, Y, and Z. And I was like, exactly. That's why we do this, right? We put ourselves out there to help other people. So it's interesting when people, to me, don't want to do that. Don't want to share who they are.
Well, that comes from a fundamental place of fear, right? We all have this. So I always tell people, they're like, you're like our psychologist. I'm like, look, I'm therapeutic, but I'm not a therapist. I'm a lawyer. I'm an expert in self-confidence, stress branding, not a therapist. However, I am a child of the human mind and how we process data and our biggest fears. And so the reason we don't show up and share is because we're scared of being judged, and we're really fundamentally scared of who we are. And it is scary. It's uncomfortable is what it truly is. I mean, every time I work on myself, which is daily because I don't have it all together, so much discomfort and so much fear. And I mean, I teach change, but it's scary for me to change and grow just as much because what's on the other side, I don't know. And but the alternative is dying, basically, not to be morose or morbid, but if you're not growing and you're not willing to at least share a little bit about yourself, then you're stagnating. And then eventually you're just going to be literally die, hopefully not, but just fall into the recesses of society. And then what purpose are you serving? I mean, I know that sounds so dramatic and I'm so not dramatic, but purpose, right?
I mean, I'm with you. Like, what's the purpose of life, right? It's to figure out who you are, where you stand, and what you want to do with your time, like whatever time that is,
Yeah, because it matters. And that's the other thing I found. Through all these years of research with my clients and formal research, informal, and just being with my clients, people don't think they matter. And so that's why I really wrote this third book, which I will shamelessly plug. It's really is about people understanding that they matter, right? Fundamentally at the end of the day. And how do we inspire people to matter for themselves so that they can do what you said, Brian, and really want to show up and share that sliver of their origin story or who they are, right? Because it matters.
So, you know, we've gone on this path of origin story, but I want to now back up for a second and can you talk to us a little bit about being a transformation expert and what exactly that is? Because we haven't gone there yet. You know, what is it? The book and the story, but what exactly is a transformation?
Brian will always derail Nicolette's question.
Yes.
It's all good. It all goes exactly where it's supposed to go, right? Really, you know, fundamentally, my work is all about my research. I did a research about a decade ago at UCLA, and I'm happy to share that. There's a research summary online, and I share it with people as they request it from me. I found out there's a direct inverse correlation between stress and self-confidence. So as stress goes up, and it naturally does for the most self-confident people in the world, because none of my clients are at a loss. Right. They may be lost and they're trying to figure out who they are, which is where the transformation comes in, but they're doing good. They're just going from good to great, right? So as stress goes up for even the most self-confident people, our self-confidence proportionally must drop according to my research, which means what? Which means we're not emotionally resonating with our audience anymore. Our story isn't sticking because we're not even showing up with our story. And so my work is really about, do you want to make more money? Do you want to get promoted? Do you want to find that perfect guy? Whatever that is, and mostly it's about money and career success because that's my expertise, then there has to be not just a change you go through, but a transformation that leaves you altered, that leaves you like you were never before. And somebody always smartly says, oh, it's the caterpillar. I'm like, it is, it truly is. So it's rebirth, literally, which is a process that I am always going through, and it's uncomfortable. But people who show up at my door are courageous. They're willing to get uncomfortable, and they're willing to get those results. Their business explodes. They get career changes. They get raises. They change careers. Like I had one client who had such a horrible relationship with her mom, moved her client across the country to be with her, got married to a guy who she was refusing to marry after 8 years. The business grew. She'd come from a really big business, but she shifted and she grew this other business. That was not me. That was them willing to show up and go through the process, which is around my research. So that's what the transformation part of it is. But it's generally around money and wealth and people being able to grow their careers and their businesses.
So I was watching one of your videos the other day, and you were talking about imagination, right? So how much does imagination, because I love creativity, like anything creative or imagination, right? How much does that play into the transformation, like, you know, being able to envision, you know?
It is everything, Brian and Nicolette. It truly is. And I was just watching a Joe Dispenza video, so I'll plug him. But yesterday he was saying it. Look, we can rewire our brains. You know, if you want to talk scientific, let's talk scientific. I'm left brain linear analytical. But the creative right brain is what pulls those changes into place, right? So if you don't imagine something new outside of your current circumstances, you cannot rewire your brain to have those new circumstances. And I know for some of your audience, I just took a giant leap and they're like, what is she talking about? Don't worry about that. Just the fact that when we were children, we used our imagination. We were allowed to. And I literally mean that. And as adults, it's like, what are you sitting there, you know, watching the clouds, and you're wasting time and you're not busy, which means fundamentally then you must not be wanted and productive. It's so wrong because we're killing ourselves by doing so much rather than just sitting and imagining the future or the present that we want, and not using as our baseline what we see in front of us, which according to science says it rewires your neurons to actually then think differently because you're thinking in an old-fashioned way. But when you imagine something new, imagine being the billion-dollar producer, imagine being the TV show queen, imagine the best-selling book, then you're literally rewiring that thought process in your brain, and that imagination allows you to sit in that possibility. And I know now I'm getting all woo-woo, but truly without imagination, life isn't fun. So
Actually,
I encourage it and I try to do it.
You kind of brought something up that I was thinking of. And as we're talking about imagination, what I really heard was hope. Because it's almost like if you're so you're thinking of something that might be possible. You know, there maybe, just maybe, right, this vision might be a possibility. So there's some sort of hope there. And then I guess that hope needs to kind of, you got to build on that and work through that so that it becomes like faith to continue. And I don't mean not a religious way, just faith, right, spiritually, to continue on and to make that happen.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, Nicolette. Yes, faith. It has nothing to do with religion in my world. It's about, I guess you wrap it around spirituality, but it's around, do you think that there's a different possibility for you? And do you always believe you're taken care of? Can you trust? Why do you think, if you haven't heard of Gabby Bernstein, why do you think her books are #1 bestsellers? You know, one of her books was The Universe Has Your Back. It's just about relaxing a little bit and believing in yourself and believing that no one's out to get you. Nothing bad is going to happen to you. And when you relax into that, then you can actually sit back and create from your imagination, because you're not in fear. So stress leads to fearful responses, right? And we're always reactive. But when we sit back and go, you know what, I'm just going to trust that today's going to work out, you like relax, and then you're not coming from a negative response cycle. You're coming from a I am the one that can create whatever I want. It's just much more empowering. And from my perspective, working with brands and people's brands, frankly, because that's all I work with, people's brands, is that is so attractive to other people, because you just show up differently for folks. You know, when you have that faith, people are like, I don't know what I like about you, but I just do. That's what I really want all of my clients to exude. So I have 4 values, and one of them is faith.
There you go.
Happens. One of my clients put it on my mug, and so.
What are the other ones?
Oh, okay. The other ones are fairness, freedom, and fun.
There you go.
So,
I like them.
Fun.
No alliteration necessary, but one of my clients was so I don't know, moved by it that they put it on a mug for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And, you know, I mean, what's crazy is even, you know, we were talking about bigger things like writing books or being a TV producer. But when you even bring it back to your business, it's putting yourself out there. And when you sort of, I'm going to go with your words, the universe has your back, right? Or, you know, what happens is you don't really worry about how other people are going to see it. You know, you're out there, you're doing what you want to do, and you're you know, pursuing your dreams, or without worrying about the judgment, I guess, you know, which gives you.
And, you know, it's so hard, though. I mean, all of this stuff that you and I talk about is simple, but it's not easy. And why do I know that? Because every day I'm working on it for myself. I'd be such a hypocrite if I said I've got this all figured out.
Yeah.
I work on it daily. I literally meditate daily. Now, does everyone have to meditate? Whatever you got to do to get yourself like in the space of calm, because calm equals powerful, agitated equals weak.
Yeah.
And in business, to your point, that's what people see. When you show up and you're flustered, or you're talking a mile a minute, or you're not listening to people, that signals that you don't care about them, even though maybe deep down you really do. Businesses flourish when people think you're on their side, whether they're your clients, or they're your prospective clients, or they're your strategic partners. Brands flourish through that. So if you're not taking time to get it together, and part of that process is trusting that it'll all work out. Like what does it take? If we stop in this present moment and we look around our world, this is what always grounds me back into my body and reality. Like, what am I lacking? What am I truly lacking in this moment? And I realize nothing. So what's my problem with not trusting that the next moments afterwards I'm going to be taken care of too?
Yeah.
Well, that's the evidence, which also builds that faith. I mean, once you see the evidence and the small things, right? The small things start to build up, and you're like, wow, okay, that worked out, and that worked out, and now maybe I'm on the path of this next thing working out. And that's where that's where the hope kind of turns into the faith.
Yes.
Right.
However, here's the deal, Nicolette. We are, as I always say, my coin phrase, we're over texted, over tweeted, over caffeinated. We're not seeing the evidence because we're so not present at all.
Mhm.
And it's so painful when people aren't present because their stress is through the roof. I'm like, when we start with our clients, we give them a baseline. If you are not self-aware, you have no idea what your baseline is for anything or how you're coming across to other people. So you can't find the evidence. You can't show up for other people. You can't intentionally grow a business that way. It just doesn't work, right? You have to have intentionality, and then you feel in control and empowered, which is what my job is for other people.
So I know we have a couple of minutes, and I want to wrap up with this. So it's twofold. All right. So are there certain trends or things that you're seeing, kind of these recurring themes amongst your clients, and then the second part, which I'm going to squeeze in, is what is some of your advice to them if they're just getting started with you?
So the biggest trend I see, because I consult in companies, large and small, is employees are all telling me, literally, I'm not kidding, because I'm a researcher, right? I watch for trends. One person says it, okay, two or more, okay, we got a problem. They all say, I'm isolated. They literally use the word isolated.
Mhm.
And I say to them, you're isolated with all this technology. You can be talking to China and India from your desk, or just walk out of your cubicle, or you're in a bullpen with tons of other people. And they say, not the same, I'm isolated. So that isolation is a problem. Technology is great, but technology has its problems. So people are more and more isolated. I just got interviewed by a company that tracks airline seating. And they said, hey, we're seeing a trend. People are sitting more in the windows instead of the aisles. I said, I totally see that as a behavior expert. They're isolated, and they're choosing that isolation because they are not owning who they are, and their stress is taking over, and they're not able to show up. So yeah, go ahead.
They're clearly not like me, who needs to go to the bathroom every second and needs that aisle seat.
Fair enough, right? They're willing to come over and walk over me. I'm an aisle seat person and drive me crazy. I'm like, take control of your bathroom time, And I fly all the time. Maybe they don't fly all the time, but I watch their habits. They sit in that corner. They pull their hoodies over their head because they're mostly tech people. I don't know. I shouldn't assume all tech people wear hoodies, but and they just shut the blinds too. That's the other trend.
Yeah.
Planes are such dark, sad places anymore. Like I always have to have my overhead light on. Anyway, that's a whole other interview we can do. The number one thing I say for people is please stop and figure out something about yourself. You can't keep going down this path of isolation. And because I don't want it to lead to what we see common in so many professions, suicide, for instance, in the legal profession, the dental profession. It's because people don't ask for help and support. So, and asking for support does not mean you're weak. So I literally started a program for free. It's just free. It's called Support Salons. And I run it locally in our offices here in San Diego. I'm trying to figure out what else to do with it to support more people. And when I first started it, my staff was like, what are we selling? I'm like, we're not selling anything. Nothing. I need support. I thrive when I'm supported. And I know other people do too. So we've got this nice office space. Once a month, we open it up for free. Who needs support, but who also is willing to give support? If you're not willing to give support, you can't be a one-way street. It doesn't work. So my biggest tip is find a support network. And this is not for people who are broken. Look at me. Do I look broken? I need support. I ask for help. I'm not very good at it though, right? Because as an immigrant, as a strong woman, I should be able to handle this all by myself. It's not true for any of us, right? We all need community. And because of technology and other things, so I hope technology people don't beat me up. I have a lot of technology clients. We're losing that connection to community. And so your program is so important. What's your story? Find the connection to yourself, ask for support. You'll find tons of people in the same place as you. Start the self-healing process for yourself and build community, because otherwise there will be such a disconnect in humanity despite technology. And I know that sounds so doomsday, but look at the trends, and are we happy as a society? Are we producing more results, but are we enjoying the results?
Thank you, Katy. Can you tell us a little bit about where people can find you, and your book that's coming out? Let us know. Let us know everything.
What book? No. So they can go to all our resources, puristconsulting.com, www.puris, like Sam, puristconsulting.com. There is a webpage for myself coming up, but that's not ready yet. And we have all sorts of free content. Like Brian was saying, we have Katy TV, we have podcast interviews, we have blogs out the yin yang, monthly newsletters they can sign up for. We do a free monthly webinar because people always want to know two things about me. Who are you? What do you do? And what is this thing called Branding Boot Camp? Branding Boot Camp's a program we've been running for 10 years, virtually and live, where we cover all the fundamentals in a group setting. So it's support in 2 hours once a month. And they can sign up for that. We have all sorts of content, different price points. And the book, this third book I wrote, I thought it was going to be another book on branding. And what really came out was the concept of how to reduce our stress and increase our self-healing capacity by all the modalities that I already teach. And it's called Perfectly Imperfect. So it's being edited, and I'm really excited to share this book because this book just is not about me at all. It's about anybody who gets their hand on it really realizing that they matter and that they have the capacity to self-heal and self-soothe and take care of themselves at a deeper level than they ever imagined just by reading a book.
That's so awesome. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all this with us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.